everyone. Welcome to the debate. I'm your host, MAQBOOL, with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is with reference to Pakistan's economic conditions, and this is, of course, important, especially in terms of the developments that we've seen coming in from the IMF, which, of course, has also taken up on the agenda on the 25th of September, of course, later this month, to talk about the EFF and, of course, give the final approval, which Pakistan has been waiting for. This is important, especially in terms of what this means for the country's economy and its progress, but also in terms of how other investors are going to be taking a look at Pakistan. And we've seen that a development has taken place with ADB that has talked about assurances of providing $2 billion annually in loans from 2024 to 2027. And this is, of course, important, especially in terms of the interest rate that has also been offered at a concessional rate to Pakistan for about $1 billion. It's important also in terms of the kind of deals that Pakistan has struck recently and the assurances, of course, that it needs to give to IMF, and then also in terms of how exactly we're going to be moving ahead when we have the EFF, inshallah, and then, of course, in terms of what is going to be the way forward at which, of course, the government, the ministries are going to be important stakeholders, and, of course, the country. So we're going to be taking a look at what this means, particularly in terms of how this impacts the board's decision, how this also impacts Pakistan's economy in the short and long term, and then also what sort of investments Pakistan will be taking a look at in the future, and what will be the return plan as well, given, of course, that there have been other deals that have been made on very high interest rates. So we're going to be taking a look at that on our first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to be taking a look at Pakistan-US relations, which is going to focus on particularly in terms of the kind of development that has taken place recently, with the US also talking about the way that equipment and aspects of technology that can be used for missile development has been exported to Pakistan. And this is something that the US has, of course, claimed reportedly, and has also talked about this in terms of the kind of sanctions that it wants to impose on many Chinese-led companies also, that they seem to be involved in this process. But also, of course, it's important that the acting Undersecretary of State of the US came to Pakistan on a visit and has met with important leaders, including, of course, the Prime Minister, and has spoken about the way that this is going to move forward and the kind of partnership that the US and Pakistan, of course, seek. And then, of course, in terms of the energy issues as well that Pakistan is facing, the counterterrorism issues that the country is facing, and also in terms of the cooperation that has been extended by Pakistan in terms of repatriation of Afghans in the US. So we're going to be taking a look at what the significance of this visit is and how it impacts the overall dynamic. That is going to be our focus in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst FARRUKH and Raja FAISAL. And we've also been joined online by guests, Dr. NASIR IQBAL, who's head PIDE Macro Policy Lab, and also Dr. VAQAR, AHMED, who's the senior economist. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the discussion and joining us today. I'm going to start with you, VAQAR Saab, first, in terms of what we've seen, particularly in terms of the way that different agreements and negotiations have taken place with different development partners, be it with different state institutions or other banks or other financial institutions. It's important to see what sort of deals Pakistan has struck and the kind of assurances that we've gotten as part of our bilateral engagements. And I want your take, particularly in terms of many of the recent deals that, of course, have been struck on high interest rates, as opposed to, of course, what we've seen coming in from the ADB. There has been some sort of concession that has been given to the country, but I want your perspective and a closer look at these particular agreements and deals and what you think of them and the way that they're going to impact the economy.
Thank you very much for having me. I think I'll take lead from your introductory remarks. The past week has been very welcoming for the markets, plenty of good news, and I think this rally should continue next week as well, given that we are expecting a high-level Russian Deputy Prime Minister's visit as well to Islamabad. We also note a high-level delegation who met with the President and the Prime Minister from the Asian Development Bank. Yes. Of course, all of this is happening on the expectation that the fund program is on track, and of course there will be announcement coming with regards to this $7 billion of program, which the board is set to approve on the 25th of September. We also see that there is a glimmer of hope when it comes to improvement in the macro fundamentals. It's still short term, but you can see that rupee is gaining ground. The borrowing costs are being lowered, and one can see some interest on the foreign investor side as well. Particularly if one looks at the portfolio investment, we have seen foreign investor return to Pakistan Stock Exchange as well during the past week's session. So all in all, I think this is good news, but no room for complacency, given that, of course, overall investment rate is still down, foreign exchange reserves are still under pressure.
Right, absolutely. And I agree with you. These are, of course, important and positive developments that have been coming in. But I also still want to focus on a couple of arrangements that have been made with reference to the kind of deals that Pakistan has struck, and also in terms of what will be the way forward. Of course, there is one expectation coming in from the IMF, and I'll discuss that in further detail as well. But I also want your take in terms of the negotiations and the bilateral engagements with different countries and other financial institutions on high interest rates, and particularly in terms of Pakistan's plan of action or strategy that needs to be put in place when we also talk about a return plan, when we talk about what sort of measures need to be taken to sustain all of these loans and then also to move forward towards progress. Do you think that we have that?
Yes. So I think while there's a lot of thinking going on at a granular level, but this is easier said than done. Short-term stability, we have seen these bouts in the past as well. There have been stints of short-term stability, but this is going to be a very tough fund program. So if, for example, we have to convert these loan or debt-based successes into investment-based successes, there's a lot more that needs to be offered. And, this is where a lot of macro-level thinking, federal, provincial coordination may be required in terms of what is it that we can really offer to these delegations, these investors which are coming in. I'll give you one small example. The new IMF program will not let us sign any investment deals that allow guarantees to investors, sovereign guarantees to investors. We may not be able to provide any blanket tax breaks or production side subsidies, So what new can Pakistan really think? We'll need to be very innovative, and I'm glad to see that SIFC has started some thinking on a new industrial policy wherein they would move away from these traditional instruments which were on offer to foreign investors and really have some sort of thinking in terms of longer term engagement of those investors staying in, not on the back of subsidies or tax breaks, but on the back of genuine productivity growth that they can bring in this country and translate that into export gains.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Nasir, I also want your perspective, especially in terms of the fact that it's good news, of course, that we have the agenda item taken up on the board with our extended fund facility, but also the fact that this will be important in terms of mapping out the future for us and what sort of actions the ministries and the government are going to be taking in. The EFF itself has a 5% interest rate, and I also want your perspective in terms of what exactly will be the way that we're going to have to engage with the IMF, particularly from now till the 25th, if there is anything that you think it can possibly come in the way. And then after we get the approval, hopefully, what sort of aspects do we still need to consider in order to making sure that we'll be able to balance out both the tough measures at home, keep on bringing in more FDI, and then manage the extended fund facility as well?
Thank you so much. I just take what VAQAR already said, that this is the opportunity for us. We should take as an opportunity because all kind of economic signals are moving in the right direction. We have a little bit low inflation, the oil prices are going down. That would help us in terms of managing foreign reserve, as well as there is some hope from the IMF. So this is what we really need to kick off our economy, to kick off our economic plans, to kick off our economic agenda. So what are the next future? Because in the coming month, we will be with formally we will be with the IMF. So of course, whenever we are with the IMF, there is some sort of like demand contraction in the economy, as VAQAR already mentioned that you can't give a blanket like approval to all kind of investment. You will be very, very conscious about all those decisions. So, what kind of futures we are imagining and we are envisioning that what really steps we are needed to make sure that this time, this opportunity can be translated into a real potential and into a real growth. First of all, we should be very clear about what kind of investment we are attracting from the friendly countries. We should be very clear on it. If it's some sort of investment in the consumption economy, then probably ultimately we end up with the same type of it as we have with the China in terms of repatriation of the profit and other things like that. Secondly, if we didn't increase our export, ultimately we always will be remain in a pressure of the reserves, and that would put a pressure on the exchange rate. As you know that IMF has also projected that this year the exchange rate would be around 325, something like that. So if we have to increase this up to 325, it would be again difficult for us to control inflation and other cost measures. So we have to go for a real action. For that, the first fundamental that we have to focus is to create some sort of a stable environment. It's not about the political stable, it's all about the economic stability of the country. You know, we heard like a news from the ministry and other forum that there will be a mini budget in the coming days to increase the tax collection. We have to avoid these type of like a small tinkering with the economic policies because it could create uncertainty within the system. So if we are really looking for a long-term investment, long-term revival of the growth and the resilient growth, we have to make sure that the economic policy would be consistent, at least for the short time period. For next 2 to 3 years, we should have a very consistent economic policy. And that economic policies must be backed by the political stability. And as you know, our political system is struggling with some other issues. Those are not important at this point in time. We have to focus on the important issue. And the important issue at this point in time is only one agenda, that is economic revival of the country.
Absolutely, and you're right. And Dr. Nasir, you've rightly mentioned big issues and big ifs as well, and we're going to be exploring that further. But let me just go back to Dr. VAQAR once again. Dr. VAQAR, with reference to the EFF, once Pakistan secures that, do you see the state bank's interest rate coming down as well, and for business in Pakistan to have some sort of ease? And of course, in terms of what we want and the measures that you were referring to earlier as well, in terms of making Pakistan that vibrant place for businesses, will we be seeing that?
Yes. So I think there is much probability that, of course, Pakistan will remain on the track of fiscal discipline, which we have seen in the past few months, and this is a prerequisite from the fund. And of course, fund will closely review this fiscal discipline every quarter as part of their requirement. So if last programs provide some example, we have seen inflation come down, and with the coming down of inflation, the interest rates have also fallen. And now the next part, of course, is difficult, and of course, a state bank is autonomous. State bank is free to take its own decision. But the falling interest rates should not result in a spree which leads to outflow of foreign exchange on things which are not required for industry or for productivity. We direly need the foreign exchange for, of course, raw material, new addition to our capital machinery, which can translate into exports, and exports not just in the traditional sectors. We want to see exports of value-added goods go up. So this will be a balancing act which the central bank will have to play, and we hope that they'll do this in very close coordination with the fund and the Treasury Ministry of Finance.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. VAQAR Ahmed, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Faisal, I want your take on what Dr. Nasir was earlier saying as well. And of course, while we talk about the economics of it all, there's also, of course, the aspects that are necessary to ensure that these measures are taken, there is implementation, there are people who are making all of these very important decisions, and of course that then boils down to the kind of people that we have in the government and the ministries, and how willing and capable they are in terms of making sure that things happen. And of course then how much of this is coordinated amongst all the different stakeholders and decision makers in all provinces, from the federal and of course different aspects of the institutions. And so I want your take in terms of, when we talk about economic policy, economic consistency, and we'll obviously have to show that throughout the extended fund facility, what exactly will then be the measures that Pakistan will have to take in this regard? Because this is something that has eluded us so far.
Yeah, Sana, it's a good question, and obviously all we want is a consistent economy, and the kind of policies we have adopted and the decisions which were made by the current government. Of course, some would say that they were very difficult decisions to be made, and of course they have made. And the inflation, yes, initially we saw that there was inflation was skyrocketing, but it got contained, and now it is being seen that stability in terms of inflation, it is coming back. And I think this is the positive indication. And number two, when we talk about IMF, the meetups with the IMF, of course they gave us a direction in terms of recommendations, that these are the recommendations, this is how we should be actually sort of running our economy. And when it comes to privatization of different institutions, we have been seeing that there were certain developments. And when we talk about the certain decisions about taxation and to increase the like FBR and the right corridors of the power when it comes to taxation, they should be working overtime in terms of enhancing the taxation, not the taxation over individuals who are already paying tax, but of course the volume of the people who are paying taxes, that needed to be of course increased, and work is being done on that as well. So when we purely talk about ADB, the money which is being of course given to Pakistan, Asian Development Bank always extends help not only to the federal but of course the provincial level as well, as we are seeing that province of Sindh separately is being given certain projects, money for certain projects, and same is the case with the KPK as well. And all the federal should be making sure that all of these sort of investments, they are being seen on ground, in terms that both of the governments, that of course one of the political party is part of the federal government as well, which Sindh I am talking about. The other one is of course KPK, but federal needs to make sure that the money which is being going there for different projects, it is being seen on ground as well. And especially when it comes to Sindh province, of course there are certain matters related to the people who were affected by the floods, and this money, to me, I think it has a lot to do with the promises which we have been seeing in recent past, right after the floods of Sindh and Balochistan. Of course we saw that there were a few pledges which were made, and right here of course the money is coming for improvement of the housings of the people on the ground. So probably this needs to be checked in. And when it comes to the transparency of the system, be it federal level or be it the provincial level, the transparency, it needs to be as transparent as water itself. And when it comes to of course recommendations, I am pretty much sure that these injections which are being given to Pakistan from ADB, the amount which I believe half of the amount is asked to be given in the hand to start with. Otherwise, it was a proposal to of course every year we will be getting $2 billion I think, and that is a positive factor for our economy. And of course, whenever we were talking about the talks which were being carried out between government and the IMF, I remember we have been highlighting again and again that once we will be having positive talks with the IMF and the improvements or developments would be positive, then of course we will be having a positive sort of impact of that as well. Same we saw with the Moody or Fitch, both of them, they came up with the wordings for Pakistan that we are of course positive now, previously we were stable, and of course we are heading towards further positive plus. And in that context, of course, at that time we did discuss that that positive impact will of course attract other stakeholders as well to invest in Pakistan. Here we are seeing ADB coming, and time is not far that our friendly countries with whom we are already having talks to of course renegotiate or reschedule the payments to them, that would be a positive sign as well for Pakistan. And when it comes to FDIs, of course the all indicators would take us towards investments and attracting more investments.
Right, absolutely. And this is what I want to further understand, and Farrukh, I want your opinion on this, particularly in terms of helping me and the audience understand what exactly do we mean in terms of the impact, or in terms of the way that we'll see things change when we talk about all of these investments and these deals, because of course it's important to get money in or to get investors in, but how much of that is going to directly benefit the people of Pakistan, and then also in the long term be helpful for Pakistan's economy? Because while of course we talk about these loans coming in as very important, of course, in this hour of need and the way that we want to engage our economy, it is also something which is again adding to our debts in general. And so I want your take in terms of understanding the cost benefit analysis of all of this, and also in terms of the long term ways in which we're looking at this, because while of course there are things to celebrate now, how are we going to deal with all of this?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question, which was very pithy. I think that you have actually isolated the real problem, and I think that about this time, after so much debt that we have accumulated, it is very important for us to pay attention to the interest rates that we agree to, right? Pakistan's debt to GDP ratio is really high, really high. Debt in itself is not a bad thing. America is the most indebted country in the world. But then a counterpoint is that America also pretends a global currency, and because of that it has a lot of leeway. Its interest rate actually controls the world's inflation also, in a way of speaking, right? Pakistan has to actually ensure that Pakistan grows its economy to such an extent that these issues, these debts actually don't become a problem. For a country that was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy only a couple of years ago, I think it is not bad that Pakistan is once again entering into another EFF with the IMF, and because of that, of course, these ADB, World Bank, IMF, they are conjoined, right? So if you actually mollify or you convince IMF, then others also start competing. IMF actually charges you 5% of interest rate, and ADB charges you 2%. Are we clear on which country, we keep on talking about friendly countries? Wherever we are actually borrowing from any friendly country, what are the interest rates? Faisal was talking about transparency, so that is also important, right? We used to, just to understand, underscore the interest as a problem or a concern, we used to, in my youth, we used to play a game, a hypothetical game, of course. Would you rather have 1 million today, or have a single penny today which doubles, and that value doubles next day for 30 days? So usually people being gullible would go for 1 million, but what happened was that when you actually kept on doubling the value, by the 30th day, you amounted to somewhere around $5.5 million, right? So this is how interest works. You know, if you double or compound any interest, that can kill you. And this is what is happening in our economy when small-time lenders are through apps are literally destroying lives. A person actually committed suicide because of that. So you have to be very vigilant about interest rate and then focus on the growth of economy. I think at this time everyone wants Pakistan to succeed. For example, we are trying to restructure FBR, and through Karan Das Pakistan, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is also helping restructure of FBR's processes, digitalization and whatnot. So that is great news. But then when it comes to FDI, or for that matter growth itself, our biggest problem, Sana, has been that we are an import-led economy.
Yeah.
And so what happens the moment your economy starts to grow, what happens is that immediately foreign capital starts leaving, foreign currency actually starts fleeing the country. And in the end, we have this current account deficit, which becomes a tragedy, which becomes a problem, right? And that continues repeatedly. So we have to ensure that when the growth comes, the economy does not overheat. And then we have to actually start importing the skill and the capacity also. That would essentially mean that when you are attracting investment, not only you import embodied content or commodities, but then you ask the investors to invest on the basis of BOT, that is build, operate, transfer. Once you are going or leaving, at least leave the technology here so that we can actually keep on working with that and keep on generating more revenue. With that kind of a situation, I think things are going to look up. I'm just going to complain or share my concern about the way our banking sector has been operating. I don't know, General Pervez Musharraf passed years ago. One would have asked him what possessed him to actually immediately when he was in power, he introduced economic measures which encouraged consumerism, or for that matter conspicuous consumption, lending cars, and then enabling those cars to actually install CNG kits. That literally depleted our gas reserves and then also created so much distortion in economy which was not needed. Infrastructure also just collapsed. So if you are planning for the future, plan for the future.
Absolutely.
With the view that 30, 40, 50 years ago, we or our descendants have to live in this country, and policies should not be short term.
Absolutely. And Dr. Nasir, I want you to take up this question as well in terms of planning of the future. Are we even doing that? Because of course at this time around, and I understand with the kind of economic crises that Pakistan has been facing for quite some time now, there is of course that need to have the extended fund facility to engage with the IMF, to engage with development partners, to engage with different countries, and to secure deals which are important in of course giving that financial assurance to IMF, but also to sustain ourselves at this point. And the government and the finance ministry has worked extensively towards that and has succeeded also. But in terms of making sure that it's not only today that we're actually looking at it, focusing on, and that we're able to ensure that there is progress, not that we're actually digging holes for ourselves again, what exactly do you think we need to do today, or the aspects that we need to keep in mind today in order to ensure that? Because like you said, talked about political stability, for example, these are things perhaps that might be more abstract and might be even harder to achieve. And given our history in the country, we have seen the kind of problems we face with that. But what are absolute concrete measures in the economic terms that you think we really need to take today, that we can take under the EFF also to ensure long-term future success?
Thank you. I think it's a very valid observation. PITAFI have mentioned that whenever there is a revival of economy, it's a consumption-based economy, and we always struggle with the foreign reserve because we don't have enough export to cover that gap. The way forward is very simple. To me, it's a very simple if we really interested to revive our economy on a permanent basis. At the moment, we have enough injections from these like IFIs as well as from IMF to survive. So we consider this as a survival. Then the next step is toward the increasing our export base. That's the only solution. What kind of measures we are really looking for to revive our export, and that would help us to create a sustainable economy. First, our focus is primarily on the tax side, where we are trying to meet the gap by increasing tax rate either on the existing like a taxpayer or by imposing a tax on the newcomers. So this is our approach. But this curtail the economic activities because you are collecting money from the businesses. We propose an alternative solution where we suggested to reduce tax rate on many heads, especially GST, and also give us some sort of support to a new economy, a new industry. So this will give you a two type of advantages. One, it will give enough money to businessmen, to business community and other investors to start making an investment. Two, it will create an economic activities within the system. And this type of economic activity would create your export base, would help to increase the export rather than to increase the consumption, because now you are allowing the business, you are allowing the investor to make investments. So that would be the first part. The second part is to really think of our expenditure nature. We are lucky enough that this reduction in the interest rate would help us to curtail our interest payment. But on the other hand, we also have to reduce our current expenditure. We have to reduce so many unwanted like expenditures on protocols and other stuff like that. We have to rationalize our state-owned enterprises, what kind of leakages are there, what kind of subsidy we are giving to them. We have to control them. If we do this dual type of intervention, one, we allow businesses to make investment. Two, if we really help to control our expenditure side rather than focusing on the taxation side. So these are the concrete measures we are really looking for. As you said, the institutional reform, the political stability, and the legal issue, these are like a long-term issues, and maybe we will not be able to resolve within this 3 to 4 years. But at least we can create a consensus on economic agenda. And economic agenda is not about increasing a revenue through taxation. Economic agenda is how we can revitalize our local investment rather than the foreign investment. Though foreign investment is required, but even they are not interested unless our local investor is ready to make investments. So we have to promote markets. We have to create ease of doing business. We have to eliminate this culture of permissions, NOCs. These kind of measures that need a one will. These are not hard rules. So the best way is to eliminate all these kind of requirements. Let them that if one person can violate the rule of law of the country, you will take action. Other than that, you allow them to do any kind of business. The people are ready to make investment. They have a fear because your inspector are behind them, the tax inspector are behind them. So many like legal issues they are facing. So these are the very easy solution to me, that we will go for economic charter, what we call it economic prosperity charter, whatever we call it, where we call that we need to allow to market to develop. The people can make investment. There will be no need to take any NOC. There will be no need to take any permission from any.
Dr. Nasir, the problems you are highlighting here, don't you think that the SIFC is already addressing all of these issues?
So the SIFC is primarily meant to convince the global players, especially the Gulf players. They are still reluctant despite lot of effort by the SIFC. They visited Pakistan. What kind of fear in their mind are picking from the proposal, the presentation we presented to even the KSA delegation. They are not like happy with the presentation that we made to them. Why? Because what we are telling them that we are on the default side, we have this issue, we have electricity issue, we have corruption issue. We are highlighting our own issues rather than giving them a good picture that this is the area where you can make investment. We can create a win-win situation. You know, the Saudi Arabia has a lot of money to make investment in all over the world, and they are making actually investment in all over the world through their funds. Why they are reluctant to make investment in Pakistan? The question that is important for them is economic stability and political stability, and they highlighted that on many forums. And SIFC has no answer to that. SIFC only give them assurance that we will give you all kind of NOCs under one umbrella. That is okay to them. But they are looking for the complete system, complete environment, where
Right,
because the
of course.
investment is a long-term investment. They
Of
can't
course,
come here
and
for
that
a
is very, very important.
1 year.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Nasir Iqbal, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And we'll continue on this because this is important, especially in terms of ensuring that we do have investment, and then, of course, investment in the right places and on the right terms as well. And Farrukh, I want your perspective on that, particularly in terms of when we talk about the investment coming in or businesses coming in the country. What is it then that we need to do to engage them? Because we've been talking about one window solutions, or what aspects Dr. Nasir was also speaking about. These are things that we have talked about before, perhaps have been partially successful in providing as well. But are these really the factors that are stopping us in bringing more investments, and what exactly needs to be there to engage more of them, and then also on the right terms and not, of course, higher interest rates? And secondly, with reference to increasing our export base, this is also another aspect that has been focused by the governments or the ministries previously as well, in order for us to focus on our exports. But what nuances are present there that are stopping us from actually doing that? Because, for example, many exporters have talked about issues with the import of raw materials, for example, or aspects that they're dependent upon when we talk about increasing or improving our exports. Can we actually do that under the EFF? Can we actually do that in terms of the kind of policy measures that are in place today?
Right, Sana, I think that if you want to, you can always create a kind of environment which takes care of the concerns regarding economy, and I think that in coming days we are going to see that. But you know, when it comes to FDI, and then SIFC was an interesting question, because you have to realize what is going on. SIFC is a welcome step, and it is going to work as a jump boat for us to start off this system. But eventually, because it is not part of the constitution, eventually you'll come back to the constitutional measures where actual power lies, right? This measure cannot go on for a long term. So in the end, it is going to be your local government, your provincial governments, and your federal government which are going to take care of those matters. And when that happens, then you have to build a capacity at every level. Otherwise, FDI cannot be actually properly handled. Having said that, there are certain concerns that I have witnessed, and it might have occurred to you as well that may it be Rikodek, right, or may it be Karke. All these companies come here and we engage them, and now with IPPs. Every time you actually try to revise a contract, they go into international arbitration and they kill us. Billions of dollars are actually imposed on Pakistan, and then Pakistan has to find a diplomatic solution. Now the question is, why is it so? Is it because our due diligence is weak? There are concerns regarding various agreements that we signed on local and international IPPs also. So you need a very, very capable, internationally qualified legal team for the due diligence. Every time you enter into any kind of agreement, you have to find ways that it doesn't, down the lane, hurt Pakistan. Apart from that, there is another concern that I have, and that is the kind of lack of imagination our private, our country's own business community has. For example, last time we were talking about IMO's Secretary General's visit to Pakistan, and I pointed out that maritime resources are huge. Pakistan's coastal line is more than 1,200, 1,300 kilometers. With that kind of exposure, in our country, what we are consuming, remember that we are food deficient country when it comes to ordinary people. They don't get meats, proteins for that matter. And the country has these beaches, and then you have all the maritime resources that you could actually, fish could be provided to the common man.
Right.
And do you know the common man, their consumption is 2 kilos per annum, per capita, right? With that kind of a situation, one asks, what is actually stopping our business community from exploring all the avenues? And there is a concern that all these businesses either don't have understanding of what is going on, or then they don't want to actually explore new avenues. If that happens, foreign investment will kill them all. And then we will be having another concern that our business community has just evaporated, and now foreigners are sitting here. So please wake the hell up before it is too late.
Right, absolutely. And that is, of course, something that needs to be taken cognizance of when we talk about the economy and, of course, when we move ahead towards progress. We're now going to be moving to our next segment, which takes a look at US-Pakistan dynamics. And, of course, in light of the visit of the Acting Under Secretary of State, and also in terms of what exactly will be the dynamics that we're taking a look at as they evolve in the kind of world that we're living in and the kind of issues that Pakistan is facing, out of which, of course, the economy is also very, very important. And so is, of course, law and order situation, particularly in terms of the threats of terrorism. And then, of course, the way that US's dynamic with China is also expanding, particularly in terms of what has recently happened with reference to the kind of rhetoric that we have seen and the actions with reference to the export of technology or equipment related to missile development to Pakistan. And so, Faisal, I want your take on that, because, of course, this visit is very, very important in terms of the engagement with the US, and we've, of course, had a great partnership with the country, and there has been so many aspects in which both the countries have engaged together. But in the evolving situation that we've seen in the world today, particularly in terms of issues of economy and terrorism, how do you see this situation moving forward, and how will this particular visit also impact that dynamic?
Yeah, it's a very important visit at this hour. Reason being, Sana, we have been highlighting in the recent past that, of course, Pakistan is fighting a war on terror. Of course, US was fighting this very war, but of course they went out of the region, and now, of course, Pakistan is still fighting the same war. And we have been, of course, seeking sort of support in terms of tech transfer, and support in terms of standing with Pakistan when it comes to Pakistan still fighting this war. And everyone knows that our enemy is still in Afghanistan, and Pakistan is still fighting that war. To, of course, pursue this war, Pakistan has to attain the relevant mastery in terms of weaponry, and Pakistan keeps on, of course, doing that indigenously within Pakistan. Of course, Pakistan does it, and with the help of China, our brotherly country China, friendly country China, has always extended a helping hand to Pakistan in terms of working on all of this weaponry to, of course, fight against this menace, a terrorist menace. Now, of course, we are seeing that the Americans are coming to Pakistan. Of course, there were certain things they have been talking about, and of course, they had talks with Pakistan about certain missiles as well, which Pakistan has attained with the help of its its neighbors in terms of military support we always have been getting in past. But the important is that right now, of course, US has realized that US has to stand with Pakistan, and US has to comply with the requirements which Pakistan has been seeking from US, seeking from its Western former allies in terms of fighting in the war on terror. And Pakistan is looking at the Western allies to, of course, sit with them and to go towards a long-term relationship in terms of countering all of these, all of these problems which are being faced by Pakistan. So to me, I think this visit was very important. Lots of things were discussed in terms of economy, in terms of our, indigenous produce as well, in terms of military equipment, and of course, if there is a tech transfer which can be transferred to Pakistan in terms of fighting against the terrorism by the Americans or our Western allies, then of course that was center of discussion, and in coming future, of course, we will be seeing that this would be considered a very positive trip.
But has that happened?
It has happened, and of course,
tech transfer.
No,
yes,
it hasn't happened so far. But of course, in coming future, of course, we will be seeing that the positive impact of this meetup.
And you're sure of that?
I am sure of that.
Okay. And Farrukh, I also want your perspective on this, because a lot of times when we talk about this partnership, I don't truly understand in terms of the tangible ways that we see it, because in terms of cooperation on these aspects, cooperation of anti-terrorism, of course, on issues of economy, on issues of development, I understand that that sort of partnership is there in rhetoric, but what does that mean on ground today? We've of course had a history of this relationship, but in terms of the issues that Pakistan is dealing with today, what actual actionable steps can the US take when it says it's our partner?
Right, Sana, and this is the most fascinating aspect of Pakistan's foreign policy. When you look at Pakistan and America actually working together, I think that very few countries have done as much for each other as Pakistan and the US. But remember, had there been no US or no US support, our army would have been stuck at the level of 80,000 people in total. That was at the time of creation and continued up to 80s or 60s and 70s. So Pakistan has benefited a lot, and then Pakistan helped the US in turning the tide of two huge waves of challenge to the West. The first was the socialism or communism, and the second one was, of course, what went on in the name of Al-Qaeda and similar kind of elements. So both countries have done a lot, but for those two countries, there's a lot of denial. And that, do you know when that happens? When two people are in a formal relationship with someone else, but they actually like each other and they want to deny that there's any closeness.
Okay.
So I don't understand what exactly is going on, because every time Pakistan has this problem. Either we, exaggerate circumstances or then short sell ourselves. Like, for example, you just heard the example from FAISAL. He was talking about war and terror only, and he was merely talking about weapons that we can get. Immediate issues, right? What about the long-term relation?
Yeah.
Remember that there are two things that happened that, for me, made me think that that is it. For their relationship, and perhaps we will lose the importance. One was Trump's administration's, after they eliminated the head of, ISIS. After that, they actually came up with a security paper, and they said, now China and Russia are the challenges, and war and terror is over.
Yeah.
And then the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I thought that this relationship doesn't have that long-term potential. But since then, both countries have moved closer. And the biggest problem is that everyone has their own perspective, and we are all stuck in the straitjacket of Cold War. That mentality and nation states, because nation states are now diffusing because of social media, globalization, so much else. I see every country as a bunch of people, beautiful, living, breathing people.
Right.
So now India might have actually influenced American perception of what is going on between Pakistan and China, but you can't wish away either the 1.4 billion Chinese or 1.4 billion Indians.
Right.
They all are reality. So instead of actually thinking that we essentially have to stoop into another Cold War, we have to work together.
Yeah.
So that is the perspective that Pakistan needs to carry forward. I think that immediately for the short term, of course, when Modi is there, when other people are there, when Adani is there, these people are going to think that, oh, this can't happen, but it can. And
Absolutely.
I've been given indication that I have to conclude now. So
Yes.
I will.
Thank you very much, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for your input. And of course, we hope that this relationship continues and does so in terms of validating each other and moving forward in terms of actual steps in partnership that both countries can take in the benefit of each other. We've done so in the past as well, and that is, of course, the hope that we have. That's all from the debate. We'll now see you tomorrow.